COVID-19 vaccinations in South Africa are still in limbo. The Health Minister, Zweli Mkhize, last week announced the suspension of the planned rollout of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. This after 6 people out of 6.6 million people worldwide, well, at least in the United States, it was about 6.8 million people who had the J&J vaccine administered. The 6 people then from that group then developed some blood clots. The South African Health Products Regulatory Authority is recommending that the pause in the Sisonke vaccine trial be lifted, provided that specific conditions are met. Healthcare workers were being vaccinated as part of that trial. Professor Linda-Gail Bekker, the co-lead investigator in that study, joins me now for an update. And so, Prof, last week when I spoke to you, you were saying that it's a matter of crossing your T's and dotting your I's in as far as your responsibilities are concerned with the ethics committees that are involved and with SAPRA, and you were optimistic and hopeful that you could resume as early as today. Any chance of that happening at this stage?
Thulasizwe, we are still locked in deliberation with the regulators. I think, again, there is shared urgency, but we do need to get it right. So documents have gone backwards and forwards, and we are working hopefully towards that goal and remaining optimistic that it will be soon.
So it appears from what I've been reading in the press that resumption is now dependent on a two-pronged process. One is with SAPRA and the other is with the ethics committees of how many universities, and what exactly are those processes?
Yes, so whenever researchers do research of a clinical nature involving human subjects, then we get both, and there are products involved, we get both the South African regulators' approval and the ethics committees that are involved with those researchers also have to see the protocol, the patient-facing material, and approve them. So the current process is that first get the regulators' approval when they're happy, and in parallel, we have gone to the ethics committees. This involves most of the large universities, as well as PharmEthics, some of our private pharmacy ethical groups, to get their permission to also lift the pause. So, I think once we've cleared it with SAPRA, I think most of the issues will have been solved, and so I think we should see a clear path forward from that point. And
those ethics committees are led by Professor Mark Blockman from UCT. And this is a question really in passing, Professor Linda-Gail Bekker. Do you know, I don't suppose that there would be any impact of the closure of UCT due to the fire and how it impacted UCT. I don't suppose this will affect the work that, Professor Blockman and his team have to do.
Yes, so, there are a number of our sites, including mine, that are affiliated with the University of Cape Town. I'm a professor at the University of Cape Town. We've all been severely dismayed and upset by the events of the last 72 hours. But nevertheless, our ethics committees across the country have been working throughout this COVID-19 pandemic, many of them working remotely and through even the lockdown phase. So in many ways, we are organized to keep going. And I know that work has not stopped in this regard. So no, even though we are very dismayed by the fires, work is continuing as before.
Sure. So one of the other aspects that were meant to happen last week were interactions between yourselves and the United States authorities, and I believe it was the FDA, and there was going to be knowledge sharing and experience and findings sharing. Did that happen, and what are the signals from their side?
Yes, so my latest information is that we did get additional details of the 6 unfortunate cases and their progress in terms of their return to health. That has been incorporated in our deliberations. In addition, I know that the manufacturer, Johnson & Johnson, is busy going through all of their AD26 data at the moment. Obviously, they have other vaccines that utilize that platform, so I know that process is underway. All of the information at hand has been incorporated within the discussions to date. So, I think that global sharing of information is happening. There is cooperation, and we, in turn, have been asked to share our Sisonke data with the manufacturer and with as they share it with the Federal Drug Administration. So I think, this is important, that all experiences with this vaccine and other COVID-19 vaccines are made available to everyone so that we can act on the best information available.
Lastly, Prof, realistically, what's your prognosis, I suppose is the word, of your estimation of how long it will take you to conclude with SAPRA and the university's ethics committees, and realistically, what are we looking at in terms of resumption of the Sisonke study? Because it does seem like, across the board, there's agreement that it should be resumed.
Thulasizwe, yes. My quick answer would be ASAP. Obviously, that's where we want to go. But once we have the approvals and we know the exact wording, for example, that needs to go into the patient information leaflet and onto the e-consent, that needs to be loaded. So I think once we have the approval, and we're hopeful it is literally in the next day or two, then we'll need a day or two just to get things up and going. I would say, we're really hopeful for, if not by the end of the week, then early next week. But I'm nervous to put an exact date, except to say that we really are giving this our utmost urgency. There isn't a document that comes that we don't turn it around, regardless, middle of the night, whenever, to get this done as soon as possible and get results, again, as quickly as possible.
Fantastic. Thank you for your insights there, Professor Linda-Gail Bekker, and always willing to share those insights with us. In a future conversation, perhaps we could go into details of what you are establishing as you continue to implement the Sisonke study and what's coming out in terms of the impact and effect of the vaccine on people who've already received it, because I know you've been filing that information with SAPRA. So perhaps in a future date, we could discuss those details.